This one I have for you. Miroslav Shook, friend of the podcast, who gets more wins in the next 3 seasons, the Knicks or the Nets?
I mean, I'm just going to say this is also a great question because 3-year time horizons are basically impossible to predict. Okay, so here's how I'm looking at it. The Knicks next year are basically bringing everybody back if you assume Hart will return, mostly everybody who matters. I also think they're pretty likely, would you agree, to be a team that adds another star at some point within the next 3 years, probably really within the next 1 to 1.5. So they got that going in their favor. They're a better team than Brooklyn now. Their guys are all at ages. The guys that matter are all at ages that you could project consistency or improvement. So the only things I'm looking at for the Knicks that I'm concerned about are like Tibbs burnout. You've got to figure out if you're going to have a bad Julius Randle season next year after a good one because he's been alternating. It's things like that. The Nets, though, like, I love the Bridges and Claxton foundation. I just think you could get a lot done with that. They're also mostly going to be intact. The concerns for me are like, are we sure Jacque Vaughn is a good coach? We don't know yet. What are we doing with Ben Simmons? Because you may have to give up assets to get rid of him. He's clearly the worst contract on either team. Because like Evan Fournier has got one more guarantee. He's basically expiring next year, Fournier is. Even RJ Barrett might be like a thought of as bad money, but he's so friggin' young and like has been productive before. I'm not worried about that. I think I'm going to go Brooklyn, and I feel bad about it, but we've seen the Nets build from the middle before. And they're really starting with like quite a head start, and they're not incentivized to tank. That's another factor because they owe their draft to the Rockets. So I think I just trust and like the Claxton Bridges foundation a lot. And I think, because if you look at just the broader track record of this team, the Nets have kind of, they built a culture with Kenny Atkinson, and they really, turned themselves into a winner deliberately. They've drafted pretty well. They've developed players, and then they fucked it all up by adding superstars that it didn't work. I don't know. I think it's the Nets because I also think they're maybe more likely to get free agents. I don't know why I think that. Recent history suggests the Knicks are just, haven't been great at that, even though the Brunson, I don't know. I'm talking in circles. Are you going to take the Knicks? Because I would like to be convinced.
I am going to take the Knicks. I think if only because the Nets do have the potential to blow it up more than the Knicks do. I guess if they have a bad season, they could decide to pull the ripcord. But like the Nets just traded all their star power. I know they don't control their own draft moving forward, but they have enough draft picks and then assets to acquire more draft picks. And also the track record under Sean Marks of not giving a fuck about how much of their own draft that they control, where you can sort of see them, it's great what Mikal Bridges is doing. Would you put it past them to trade their best player over the summer, though?
I mean, if I could get 4 first-round picks for him, I probably would.
Depending on the first. They might be some of those Knicks first-round picks, which don't have great value. And so that combined with the Knicks being more likely to go all in on a star, I think, because Brooklyn still kind of has basically, if you could bolt Mikal Bridges down and then trade anyone else plus draft equity to bring in a star, you could do that. You could go that route. I just think the Knicks are more likely to go that route. And I think if you're picking the Nets here, you have to either have confidence that they are going to go the win now route and try and acquire more win now talent, or you just have to believe with every fiber of your being that Julius Randle is going to have that the Knicks are going to drop off after this. Julius Randle is another flash in the pan. They're still not going to be able to figure out with RJ Barrett. Mitchell Robinson is going to be continuously unhappy with his offensive role and agitate to get out. If they do trade for a star, they're going to overpay, or it's going to be the wrong star. You have to have that belief. And I don't have that belief that the Knicks are going to, even if they fall back off this year, I don't think they're going to fall back by that much. And then just factoring in that they are the team more likely to make a win now trade than the Nets would be at this point, I think I have to go them. If you went with a longer window, like 5 to 7 years, I actually think it's a harder discussion to have.
I think it's really hard either way, because neither of them is going to tank. I don't think, I mean, I'd be shocked. Obviously the Knicks aren't, but I just wonder, like, are we underselling the Knicks? And I'm just arguing against myself now, the Knicks' ability to like organically grow, because the Knicks have Quickly and Grimes, and even if they hang on to Toppin, and like they have all these guys that are at ages where you would expect improvement. Throw Barrett in there too. I don't know if the Nets, like Finney Smith is what he is, Royce O'Neal is what he is, Dinwiddie is what he is. I think Claxton, I don't know what Claxton's ceiling is based on how much better he's gotten this year. And Bridges is just like a different player in Brooklyn now. So I think, I don't know. I think maybe the Knicks, if I'm not being fair to the Knicks, it's probably because I'm undervaluing their capacity to just get better without doing anything, which is very much on the table because, some of their young guys have really excelled in larger roles this year, and I don't feel like any of that's fake. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I'll just stick with the Nets so that we can revisit this, and either you or I can be right in 2026.
Yeah, we need to start. I should do this right now, like a document of like debates that we can revisit over like this question. Maybe I'll try and remember to bookmark that we could revisit and have conversations about.
Yeah. Make sure you mark down that I'm making this assertion with minimal confidence.
I actually just have that plugged in automatically. It's across all cells in the Excel sheet. Grant, minimally confident in this take.
Ready to flip flop on a dime. Okay, so let me get you one here. Real simple. This is from Splash. Why is Jayson Tatum falling out of the MVP conversation?
Simple.
Well, it's a short question. I don't know if it's simple.
I think it's because one, the players in front of him are just so undeniably better in Luka, or more valuable to their team in Giannis and Embiid, and then of course Jokic. I do think when you look at just the body of responsibility that all of them carry, Jokic is way more important to his team's offense. Ditto for Doncic. And then Giannis is way more important. I would say he's either just as important or more important to his team's offense. He's more important to their defense. And then Embiid is both equally important on offense and then more important on defense to what his team is doing. And I think people gravitate to those extremes. I don't think of late, like the slide with the Celtics on offense. I don't think that's helped. It feels like Jayson Tatum has higher variability in his offensive performances too, because of how much work he does from the perimeter. I think you can say the same about Luka Doncic, but the usage is always going to be, the total usage is always going to be there because of how central he is to the Mavs offense. That's not going to impact that as much. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but like a lot of these, I would say Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis all rank ahead of Tatum as players to me. And I'd probably throw Doncic ahead of him as well. That's going to be part of it too. And I think his case would probably be stronger if the Celtics didn't, when they were running away with the East at one point or the best record in the league, his case probably, I don't necessarily factor that in as much, but I think that would have garnered more MVP. He won the first ESPN Straw MVP poll, I think in part because of that reason. Now the Bucks have usurped them. The Nuggets are running away with the West. So just like there's more of a runaway factor there where the Bucks just look, they're going through that. They're 22-3 over their last 25 games.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just a bigger part of it. Then it doesn't say, I don't know what Tatum could do more as a player other than he needs to check the toughest defensive assignment every night, or he needs to lead his team as like the playmaker, not just the scorer. Like you need to go him to run more of your deliberate, methodical, slowed down offense.
Yeah.
And like right now, you're going to be more inclined to do that with Brogdon or White or Marcus Smart. And like Tatum's passing, it's still really good. He needs to like level up. And he could continue to level up as a scorer. I just don't know if that's going to be enough to bridge the gap so long as these players are one, available, and then two, just as good as they are.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I think too, like he's got to be wondering what he's got to do because as I was looking at all NBA stuff, he's improved his point, rebound, and assist averages in every single season of his career, including this year. So he just keeps getting better. He's getting to the free throw line more than ever this year. His true shooting percentage is above 60% for the first time ever. Like he just continues to improve. And yet he's not quite on that level. I think a couple of things hurt him. One, and you alluded to this, like he's like a 50th percentile isolation scorer in terms of efficiency. So he really still is much more like, is the three falling? Is the catch and shoot three falling tonight? And that determines if he's the best player on the floor or, just a very good one, which isn't really the case for those other guys. They have other ways to, dominate the game. I just think I would bet on him to continue getting better and to continue to like hang in.
19. It's only 19.
Right, he's only 19. Literally, somebody said the other day. I would just bank on him hanging in the conversation longer, like over the next couple of years, just because he's shown the capacity to address weaknesses. And I think the next thing might just be, scoring from a dead stop against a good defender. I think his growth is now that he's not just shoving everybody off with his off arm on every layup attempt and getting offensive fouls, and he's actually drawing fouls. Like, he clearly addressed that weakness and he's better for it. He's great. He's going to be all NBA first team as far as I'm concerned, but those other guys are just, it's not his fault. Those other guys are just, generational, dominant, whatever superlative you want to throw.
Do you want, as your next question, to be tied to the NBA franchise one or the clutch one? Which one would you prefer to lead us through?
Let's do the franchise one. I think that's kind of we'll get into some more interesting conversation there.
So Pito asks, this is such a fascinating question. Which NBA franchise would you choose to represent the model of how to build a team, culture, manage finances, etc.?
Well, just a few come to mind because there's like a lot kind of packed into this question. I think the through lines, though, that connect a lot of these teams are like, you have to have just a general, like, this isn't this kind of podcast, but like a team first approach, like all these like totally non-quantifiable like things, egoless. And so I thought of like the 2010 Spurs as kind of like the model for this, where you keep most of the team together. You just don't have a lot of bullshit. You also, this is really key to me, you have to be malleable. Like, I think the best teams are not the ones that say, we play this way, we run the operation this way. I think they're the ones that, like, and the Spurs are a good example of, well, we have the personnel to be the slowest, most boring, shut you down on defense team. And then we're also, like, a couple years later going to start shooting a bunch of corner threes because we have guys that can make them. And then we're going to play the beautiful game in the like mid 20 teens. And basically that is what accounts for the length of the Spurs, dynasty is not the right word, but their ridiculous 2-decade run. So something like that. I mean, the other teams that I think of are, you have to say the Warriors of the last 10 years or so. Because they're spending. And we always talk about how, like, it's not cool that you manage the cap well and you duck the tax here and you did this great, you like gamed your 10-day contracts and you did all this other shit. Like, just spend a bunch of money. Like, that might be the most important thing, is to be willing to just spend more than other teams, because that's how you get talent. I'd throw Boston in there because of their patience. They didn't break up Tatum and Brown when it was a real thing. Like, within, what would you say, like the last?
I think among dumbasses, it was a real thing. I don't know if it was ever actually.
Well, sure.
They did consider the Kevin Durant trade. So that.
Well, I just remember it being a real, like, we have to talk everyone down that is saying, oh, this core doesn't work, you have to trade one or the other. And this was like 2021, I feel like was being discussed. So, and then I throw the Heat and the Thunder are TBD, because they quietly like process Sixers. We just don't know how that's going to shake out. I think the outlook's really rosy right now. But I think a willingness to stick to your guns of, we are going to accumulate young talent and it's going to be terrible for like 3 years or more. I think that shows like real, commitment. So there's lots of ways to do it. I don't know if you have others to throw in there, but I think generally you've got to spend a bunch of money, and you've got to tailor your team to talent, and you got to just not have guys that are not there to win. I don't know. Like, that's kind of the three tenets for me.
So your top franchises for that are
Warriors, Celtics, Heat, and Thunder TBD. And then the model for me really is the Spurs prior to like the last 5 years.
Yeah. Especially with the whole Josh Primo stuff this season. I don't know, like organizational.
Yeah, that's a tough look.
So you had all my teams. I'm mad that you included the Thunder, because they were going to be my top pick. I think for all that was made about their tanking, like, they're just in the play-in race right now. They have a very clear roadmap to the future. And I think the biggest thing there, we've seen them do some creative stuff with the cap, with trades. I mean, just getting a look at, I know Mike Muscala was good for them, but like, now they're getting a look at Dario Saric, who's going to be free. It's like, that's someone who could theoretically play with them beyond this year. What they've done with the development of Jalen Williams, even picking up Isaiah Joe. And then of course we know like the bigger stories were Shea, or like, look at Josh Giddey's shooting. And also what I really liked that they did last season is, some people criticize them like, oh, they didn't reach the salary cap floor. You build goodwill by paying out that money to your own players, in my opinion. And so like the culture thing there, just seems like it. If you looked at Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams interact on Twitter this year, or just Shea, wasn't it? Oh, why am I getting this backwards? But have you seen the picture of, I think Shea was afraid of getting the of needles, and he's getting the COVID-19 vaccine. I think Lou Dort is like holding his hand or something, or is it flip? Did I get the players wrong there?
I can't remember.
Thunder fans need to like, that's fucking cool. And so I don't think that team, I'm not trying to celebrate like Sam Presti. I mean, we can celebrate Sam Presti for acquiring all these draft picks, but like, there hasn't been, I think it's tough when you're in such staunch asset collection mode it's so easy to not treat players or build camaraderie or build any semblance of synergy that feels like it could last. And the Thunder have done that. And so like that to me, like they might be the most impressive team. I think everyone you mentioned deserves to be there. I had the Heat as my second best team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there are any other alternatives that spring to mind, because when you were going through it and you're trying to think of every single facet, I did think about Phoenix for a while, but like just during the James Jones, Monty Williams era, I just don't know. How do you factor in Robert Sarver for that? And then the whole DeAndre Ayton stuff was weird, like especially over last offseason. So I'm not sure they belong on that. I'll tell you, the Houston Rockets certainly do not belong on that list. But do the Bucks deserve some credit here for that? They've been iffy on.
Yeah, I will credit them for, it's how do you account for, and that's really the case for a lot of these teams. How do you account for just like, well, they drafted Giannis and he's just like a one of one and he sets your whole culture because he's just not about anything but winning and works harder than everyone in the organization. Like that, it's kind of hard to fail if that's like sort of your baseline. But I do think I will credit them for when the time came, they traded their whole draft for Drew Holiday. And they found Brook Lopez and turned him into something totally different than what he was before he, was this version of Brook Lopez. And even credit them for like, I don't know, like Middleton is just better there than he was anywhere else. Like guys do get better. They find pieces and to contrast. So, and they're not a big market. So to contrast them though with OKC, like, I think the size of the Oklahoma City market makes it such that they could get away with this, because if Sam Presti took the same plan and tried to do it in LA or Boston or New York or whatever, it just wouldn't happen. Like Sam Hinkie basically got run out of the Sixers because he tried to do this in a big market. And it worked, but I would say even they didn't go as far as the Thunder have gone. So I think the market size is.
You were going to say the process Sixers haven't gone as far as the Thunder have gone?
I think the Thunder are at this for long. I think that would be an interesting deep dive, is like how egregious have both teams been in their or efforts to lose. I don't know. I think they're a lot closer than you might.
The Thunder tanked for 2. They traded Paul George. Oh wow, Paul George traded the Clippers a while ago. But they were good in that first season. They only tanked for 2 years, 21 and 22.
Well, I think they did it better because they basically took.
They didn't draft Jahlil Okafor.
We should look back at the process because we're getting off the rails here, but this is interesting to me. The Sixers hit rate on all those high picks was not great relative, compared to like how many they had and how sort of badly a lot of it went, whether it's the Fultz Tatum thing, whether it's Okafor, honestly, whether it's Simmons, like that is not a hit.
I will say at least Simmons and Fultz were just like, those were consensus decisions.
Right.
I don't know if Fultz wasn't consensus in the sense that you need to trade up to do it, but like,
yeah. That's interesting. Okay. We should Lewis Sixers Thunder side by side at some point. I'm sure that'll get looks.
The other team I was going to mention, I would think if Zion didn't get injured so much, the Pelicans would be up here, because I feel like that's created a lot of reporting around not just like the medical staff, but also just there's just the weird rumors about Zion, not so much this season, but like behind the scenes of last year. So that was another team I had thought of. And then I had one other team I'm blanking on. Oh, I don't have them here anymore, but based off what we had known publicly, if we rewound the clock like 2.5 weeks, the Grizzlies would have absolutely been on this list.
They would have. Yeah, they totally would have. That's why, which one of these is going to look the stupidest 2 weeks from now that we pick? That's the real lesson here. What about the Cavs? What do you think? I think because they took a big swing on Mitchell and they sort of had the luxury of doing that because
They rebuilt the relationship with Kevin Love until the very end too, I guess.
I think Kevin Love might just be a little prickly, don't you? I think
it's possible.
But like Garland was a hit. The Jared Allen, we'll take Jared Allen, sure. And then Evan Mobley was a hit. I think
that's a good point.
The Cavs are pretty solid,
and they haven't like not spent. They like there's like as they get more and more expensive, we'll see like how committed they are to that. But they haven't not spent. So that's I guess that's a good team. I didn't really consider them.
You know who else we also would have said that we wouldn't say now is Toronto. I think Toronto might have like headed this list if we'd done this a year ago or 18 months ago, because they've developed talent. They went all in for a title and it worked. Like they've checked a lot of the boxes for what you want your franchise to do. I just think now it's like, where are they? Now it's a lot bleaker than it looked. Just not.
What about Denver?
They're the tax avoider though. They don't spend. That's the MO.
They're in the tax right now.
Yeah, but
they also. What's the culture like if Boland Island was going to submarine it?
Yeah, I mean that's another case where I think Jokic being so great and so like low maintenance. Just, I mean, no NBA job is easy. Like, but as a Mike Malone, just this is only ever going to go so bad as long as you have Jokic there as an organizing force. But yeah, I think the spending bothers me. Maybe Utah's going to be one of those teams now too, because just for their transactional, activity, it's like, okay, well, they pulled the plug a year early, then, a year too early, then a year too late. Like they got all this stuff.
What about Washington in terms of paying their own players?
Are they the worst? Like for the things we think are smart to do as an NBA franchise,
Charlotte.
Is Washington last?
Charlotte or Houston, I think, has to be.
Yeah, maybe.
Houston's been somewhat creative with certain things. I think Charlotte, Houston, Washington all spring to mind.
Yeah.
Woj reporting that Lonzo Ball may miss next season as we record this, by the way. And do you have any sub 25-second thoughts on that?
It sucks. He's good. I like watching him play, and he mattered for the Bulls pretty clearly. That's a what? Jesus, like, so 2 full years. We're talking, 2.5 years. That's rough. That's too bad.
At that point, they start asking, are they going to get his money wiped off the books? I would think. And there's fear apparently. Woj says there are concerns about Ball's ability to resume his career and hopes that this surgery, which could cost Ball another full season away, will give him a pathway to playing again. So it sounds like this is like, that's sad. Career ending. He was really good. I'm with you.
Yeah. That's the kind of guy I would want. The best version of him fits literally anywhere and makes every team better. I just like, that's a shame to lose guys like that. There aren't a lot of players like that, the non-superstars that you would say, like, I will absolutely have him in my closing 5, just no matter what. That's tough.
Let me try and blow through this one just because it's an easy question from Joe Shook as what goes into calculating true shooting percentage. And so it's the formula for true shooting percentage is total points divided by double your true shooting attempts. And then true shooting attempts are, I say simply, but it's not math you could do in your head. Field goal attempts plus 0.44 times your free throw attempts. So if you're trying to do it by hand, it's super complicated, but that's the formula that goes into true shooting.
And like I would add too, because I pretty much only use true shooting anymore when I talk about scoring.
I don't know when I sometimes separate like 3s and 2s as well, or I'll use effective field goal percentage. Like I don't cite field goal percentage anymore. That's not like a flex. I don't do it.
No, you shouldn't. It's just like, to me, it's really just sort of like, how efficiently is this guy scoring the basketball? Because it does factor in how many free throw attempts you get, how often you make them, and like what your expected return on a field goal attempt is, because it prices in the extra value of a 3. It's just like, it is just a superior measure of efficiency. I think like that's just what it is. Because why are we, DeAndre Jordan led the league, for years and years, shooting like 78% from the field because he just caught lobs and dunked it. That's just not the same as a guy that is making a bunch of 3s and getting to the foul line a lot. It gives you a better like apples to apples kind of comparison across player types, I think. Do you want to do the question?
What's that?
Do you want to do the clutch question?
Yeah, you want me to ask it to you, or do you want to ask it to me?
No, I don't.
All right, ask it to me.
So this is from Phony Soprano. Who are the best clutch time NBA players based on stats, excluding points scored? I have this information, but I wanted to just talk about clutch in general after you hit this.
So if we actually just went by like statistical categories, like if you were just looking at who's the clutch leader in assists this year, it's Tyrese Halliburton. Who's the clutch leader in steals? Bam Adebayo. Who's the clutch leader in blocks? Miles Turner, who's a clutch leader in free throw attempts. I bet you could guess. I bet you could name the top 3 if you didn't look at it already. I bet you could guess the top 3.
Well, I have makes. I don't have attempts, but like DeRozan's up there, Butler, Embiid, SGA.
Those are the top 3. So, but I did this like before. I went and just looked at those. And if you wanted to go by, but I'll that spoils something. So I tried to come up with 3 players that I thought fit the mold. And I came up with Evan Mobley, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Derek White as just like, who are these non-scorers in crunch time for me that I think are super valuable? And then I tried to check it against plus minus and clutch win probability added to see if any of them sort of showed up near the top. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was 8th in clutch time plus minus, but then I was like, that probably has more to do with Denver just being a beast, a bear.
And Jokic being on the floor when he is at the end of games.
Right. And then I looked, the Cavs have been outscored in crunch time with Evan Mobley on the court. But this I found interesting. Evan Mobley's 11th in Predictable's clutch win probability added. And so just as someone, what he can do defensively and just some of like the offensive moments that he's had the decision-making there where he's not going to stop the ball, he's going to keep it moving. I feel confident in saying that at least one of the 3, and then we know what Derek White does. I would say at least 1.5 of the 3 names I mentioned were worthy of being nominated for this award.
I like that. I like that you tried to assign value to clutch, because what I was just going to say is like, just thinking about it this year, De'Aaron Fox is just the best clutch player in the league in terms of his scoring and has been phenomenal. And that's great. And everybody's saying like, well, once they get to the playoffs, there's going to be close games. And that's going to be really a valuable asset because they've got this guy that has just kicked ass in the clutch all year. And I just want to scream. I want to like climb onto the highest roof I can find and scream that like somebody that's been good in the clutch up until today might be useless tomorrow. Like the clutch carryover is just like, you can't trust it. The best clutch teams one year are just like, there's no correlation to the next year. It's all sample size stuff. And like, I do think like someone like DeRozan, for example, does tend to reappear in clutch, individual stuff, because that's the guy you throw the ball to when the defense is set and he's getting a lot of chances to score and he's good at it. And Fox, I think, has a little bit of that too. I don't want to say that he's going to suddenly like forget how to beat his guy and hang in the air and get fouled and finish. Like that's real. But just like the idea that good clutch teams during the year are somehow more dangerous than the playoffs because the games are close is like that's just not that's not true. It's not true. It's just, so I'm glad we got a clutch question that I could shit on and just say like, I think so. What it does do, and Russell Westbrook sort of won an MVP because he was so awesome in the clutch. But like, so it is factual that this guy was great in the clutch and it mattered and he won his team games. Like in the past, that's all. You can't take that away. But there's no carry forward for me in almost any clutch stuff that I would actually trust. Are you of the same mind, or do you think there's more there sometimes?
I'm probably like less bullish on clutch play not mattering than you are. I think to me, so I actually view it as at a team level, I find it less valuable than at the individual player level, where it's like, we know DeRozan, Lillard at this point, like you can go to those guys in clutch situations to create something out of nothing, or just those are guys who, well, I guess DeRozan's success is not necessarily translated to the playoffs, but like a Damian Lillard, like I would use what Fox has done in the clutch this year. I'd be like, that makes me confident that he can succeed in playoff basketball. Does it make me confident that the Kings or what the Nuggets have done in the fourth quarter with their defense this year, or the clutch with their defense this year, does it make me confident they can be the championship favorite in the playoffs? No. So I'm more inclined to read into it on the granular level or the player level than I am at the team level, if that makes sense.
I think I do agree with that. It's just the team stuff never, ever carries over, basically.
Do you have time for 2 quick hitters?
Yes.
The first one comes from, these were unplanned mailbag questions because it came as we were recording it. Chris, is at Dan Favale's preseason Nuggets pick a no-brainer for NBA champion?
I mean, how is it possibly a no-brainer?
That's a very bold question to ask while they're in the middle of a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, this is I hope that came in like a week ago.
No, it came in just now, and this is going to publish after their game against the Pistons. I did say this in the solo mailbag I did for our Discord members. If they lose against the Pistons on Thursday, then it's time to just I'll start smashing some panic buttons. But I will say I have not changed my title pick. I've not changed my finals matchup pick either. I'm actually feeling pretty good about the Bucks making it to the finals at this point. And I think if we're being honest, based off everything we know, and even assuming everyone's healthy, Pelicans, Zion's back, everyone's healthy, the Bucks are the safest championship pick, and they always should have been the safest championship pick.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would say too, like, aren't the Nuggets, by virtue of they're gonna have home court unless they really fall apart, they're healthy. Like, aren't they kind of the safest West representative right now too? Even if everybody's looking for reasons to pick the Suns or the Warriors or whoever.
Phoenix makes me uncomfortable just having Kevin Durant.
Sure.
I'm not gonna lie.
But you don't know if he's gonna be healthy. We don't know.
That's fair. With the Nuggets, though, do you view home court advantage for them as much of an advantage when teams are going to be able to have that? It's the altitude. We know Utah, Denver have two of the highest home court advantages, but when you're going to have like 2 days of rest in between every single game.
Yeah, I don't know. I would imagine someone that has been through a playoff series there would say you do acclimate if you're staying in town for a couple days, and so it's not quite the same. But you know, one game, if it gives you a big edge in one game in a series that only is going to last 7 at the most, that's still an advantage. I think it's going to matter a little bit, and the margins are awfully small in the playoffs. So, yeah, I don't know. So I think the Nuggets probably are the safest pick to come out of the West, but they're definitely not a no-brainer to win the West, let alone win a title. I mean, I think, what is the percentage chance that a Western Conference team wins the title this year?
Ooh.
Like 30? I don't know, you know, just because I think we both agree the two best teams in the league are in the East.
Yeah. Oh man, that's wild. And it's just like, so would you pick any West team to beat the Bucks or the Celtics? The answer is no.
No, not right now. I mean, if you told me Kevin Durant was definitely healthy, or the Warriors won every game down the stretch and suddenly we're good now,
yeah.
But yeah, I can't get there.
Would you take any team in the West to beat the Sixers? Which teams would you say would beat the Sixers?
I don't know. I might take the Nuggets over the Sixers. I mean, that's close at least, right? I don't know.
Would you take like Phoenix, Golden State?
Again, do I get to like set a bunch of caveats for either of those?
Yeah, that's what's tough. All right, so there's a case to be made. So now we're getting into the Cavs territory. Yeah. Are you picking most of the teams that you envision coming out of the West? Would you pick most of them to beat the Cavs?
That's the cutoff. I'd say probably. But
so there's a chance that the 3 most likely title favorites or championship candidates are coming from the East. There's a legitimate case. And look, I'm big on reading into single games where everyone's playing and there's the head-to-head matchups. What Embiid did to the Nuggets the last time they played, and they're going to play again, I think, on March 28th. Like, those games matter.
Yeah.
Those games, and the Nuggets are going to play the Bucks, I think, in that same stretch, too. Those games matter to me. I will say the team that I could see just, like, fucking all this shit up is just the Clippers. I don't really know what to make of them, but, like, they seem like they have the tools, and Kawhi is Kawhi. And they have so much depth, almost to a detriment, because sometimes I feel like Ty Lue doesn't know what to do with it. But it seems like it's coming together now. I wouldn't pick them to beat any of the top 3 teams in the East, but you could tell me that they did, and I'd be like, yeah, I get it.
I got to say, so I watched Clippers Warriors last night, and like Andrew Wiggins wasn't there. So it was a lot of Dante DiVincenzo trying to guard Kawhi Leonard. But like, I mean, Kawhi had, like, for him, a pretty pedestrian night, but that guy was just, I mean, he looked very, very much like Kawhi. And if you're telling me, like, so all that's to say that if the Clippers get in a series and there's no more back-to-backs in a playoff series and you have Kawhi, like, that's real puncher's chance territory against anybody, just because I mean, there were several instances last night where, like, the Warriors would make a run to try to get close, and the Warriors wanted that game. And Kawhi was just, the second he got open for a 3 or got to his pull-up, it was like, I didn't need to look at the rest of the play because that's going in. Like, he's so automatic. I think that you're dead right. The Clippers, I wouldn't trust them, but if you told me Kawhi was healthy, I would never feel comfortable picking against him specifically.
This last question comes from John. I feel like it was tailor-made for you, but comes from John. I know it's a ways away, but where do you see the ensuing seasons going for the Warriors after Steph's retirement?
I mean, it's probably not going to be great. Like, I think.
Let's reframe it this way, though. They haven't done anything to mortgage their future yet. And so I think the real question here is they don't have their 2024 pick, whatever. They traded James Wiseman, whatever. You still have Kuminga, you still have Moody, you still have Poole. Do you see them at some point before Steph retires making an all-in trade that would then substantially liquidate their future assets to where if they're going to stay good after him, you're going to have to hit immediately or like have someone already in place because you're not going to do a gap year or two. It could be like a 3-4 year rebuild.
Two thoughts. One is I would say that if they were inclined to make an all-in, let's maximize Steph at the end trade, they would have done it by now because he's 35, turned 35 earlier this week. But the competing thought with that is I think it's now clear that I was wrong about this, that they were correct to not make the all-in trade because I was all on board the like
finally
we're gonna try to win now and later because we're that like egotistical and ambitious and we think we're exceptional. And that has not worked out. So maybe they'll learn from that. But I also think finally that like they're not gonna ever trade Steph. I don't think they'll ever trade Klay Thompson. Green, I think, is probably the most likely of the three to just sign elsewhere when he opts out. So they're not going to tear it down that way. So I don't know what you're giving up to like, I don't know. I think it'll be bleak. Like, I don't know if it's going to rise to the level of like the post-title Spurs this last several years where it's like, we're going to just have DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge and pretend like this is anything close to what it used to be. Like I don't know if it's going to look like that. But it's never pretty when you end like a run of however long it's going to end up being. That's the other question. When is Steph going to retire? Because
he'll play to his 40, right?
I think I don't see why he can't. Like we talked about this offline, I think, or maybe last pod, and we went a different way with Damian Lillard. But I'm going to put Steph on All NBA first team. Like I think I'm going to do it, and I think he's going to deserve it. So. I mean, he's got a long way to fall if you're seeing a decline coming. So I don't know when this hypothetical we're post Steph era we're talking about will start.
But I would bet heavily against the Warriors still being good when he retires. I think that much has just sort of been faded. And they would have to make the trade where it's sort of the Donovan Mitchell type trade, where it's someone who is going to be incredible with Steph, but be good long after he would retire.
And like Poole, I think is pretty likely to be traded well before that. And Kuminga has not proved himself to be a starter. Moody, if you're just looking for young guys to like build around, Moody is like not in the rotation except just in rare occasions. So they don't. I mean, and Wiseman's gone. It was because it was clear he was never going to be that guy in Golden State. So like, who are you building around? Like that's on the roster right now. There just isn't that guy. Patrick Baldwin Jr. Or I mean, like, is that where we are?
I have no idea. That was the final submission comes from this is not a question, but I found it funny. I thought you appreciated it. Seventh Kevin. I don't have a question so much as I just wanted to point out that Chris Paul and Devin Booker are keeping the entry pass alive, and Kevin Durant is going to benefit from that.
You don't need to throw a good pass to Kevin Durant. Just get it there.
I mean, like an entry pass to Kevin Durant is just like he's so much bigger than everyone else. It doesn't really need to look like you're definitely if you're throwing a bounce pass to Kevin Durant. In the post, you're doing something wrong. But I will say, Kevin Durant, 1.15 points per possession in post-ups this year. The guy's just unreal. 63 effective field goal percentage. So
Seems good.
Absolutely good. Do you want to take us out of here?
Yeah, thanks for the questions as always, everybody. If you have not done so already, please subscribe, follow us on our socials, which are, if you're watching this, they're on the screen for you at Hardwood Knocks on Twitter, TikTok at Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you rate and review us. Give us 5 stars on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell your friends and enemies, most importantly. And we close, as always, with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jared Allen, who we mentioned this time in positive terms. So that's good. Thanks, guys.